demonstrating how to sculpt the basic head, neck, and shoulder of your bust using 5 pounds of wedge clay, which you guys all did. And then I also provided for you the handout on how to construct a human head face in steps. We're not going to do much beyond, you're really only going to get to like maybe the 3rd or 4th page in here, all right? And these will always be kept in the front of the room and accessible to you guys as a reference, all right? So this is really helpful if you're working on it and I can't get to you, right? Or if you're working from home and, you know, we have an appointment for a Google Meet and you don't have access to me right away. This is step-by-step instructions, all right? All right, so you have 5 pounds of clay. I recognize that you may need to take more clay as the project moves ahead. This is for your head, neck, and shoulders. You might need another pound to make additional sculptural elements that are being added to your bust, and that's fine. I just wanted to get you guys started with enough clay. All right, so keep in mind, Giovanni, can you grab me one of the busts that's back there so we can just look at size? Keep in mind that you're not making life-size busts, right? We're making busts that are probably less than half size, right? So just to give you a sense of scale. So the most important thing to remember when you're first starting out making the bust is you want to get, what?
That looks like you.
That looks like me, really?
Mm-hmm.
Not me, though. It was a student, but. The most important thing to remember is getting your proportions right, okay? You want to make sure that you have a head, neck, and shoulders that look in proportion to one another, right? You don't want to have a giant head and a teeny tiny neck, unless that's part of your design, but you also have to keep in mind structurally, if you want the head to be able to be held up, you need to have a shoulder and neck that's strong enough to hold it. So I am working on a board, okay? We're not using those damn t-shirt pieces anymore. I did take a piece of paper towel, and I like to spray the paper towel damp, and that just gives me something in between the wood board and the clay so it doesn't stick, all right? So a lot of this is just trial and error, right? You're looking at the piece of clay you have. I'm going to cut off about 1/3 of it and start with that for maybe my head. I may end up needing more, right? So I'm going to start out by just putting that into a ball. Doesn't have to be a perfect ball shape. Now I'm going to take an even smaller sliver of clay, less than 1/3, right? And I know that I'm going to need to make a neck of some sort. Right, so it's real choppy and clumpy and, right, I'm just like right now working on proportions, right? And then I have all this extra clay, so now I'm going to, can use the table, kind of shape out for shoulders. I like to start with just like a little rectangle block, and then I fold it, curve it a little bit towards me. If we all look at each other, you'll notice that your shoulders are not back here, right? Your shoulders curve forward a little bit. So I tend to start out with something real raw like this, right? I don't necessarily know if it's perfect, but I have a head, neck, and shoulders, and now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, you know what? The head's a little small. So I'm going to add a little bit of clay, right? So right now, I'm just focusing on proportion. Everything's solid. I'm not hollowing out. I'm not worrying about detail. I am just beginning to get the rough shape of my head, neck, and shoulders, right? If you are doing female, you can start building out the bust. What kind of sculpture is this that I'm doing right now? Anybody remember the name of this?
You're doing fingers.
Additive
Very
sculpture.
observative.
Additive sculpture. I'm simply taking and smushing and adding clay to begin making the basic shape of my bust. Now, why am I not slipping and scoring? I'm just like jabbing clay on here. Why don't I have to slip and score? It's all plastic. It's all plastic, right? It's all plastic clay, right? I do also want to point out that human heads, right, our skulls are round right here, but if you look at a picture of a human skull, it gets narrow and pulls forward at your jaw, and your neck angles upward. So I don't want to see round basketball stuck on the head, right? Look in the mirror, look at your profile, look at the shape of the head, and recognize that when you shape out a head, I use my palm, the top is very round, and then the front of the face and the jaw begin to angle outward, and the neck is on a slant, right? And you have to be mindful of where you're placing your head in relation to your neck. Does that make sense? So everyone's going to start out really, really raw like this. It's gonna look messy, your proportions may not be 100% correct, and then you're gonna kind of step back, you're gonna look in the mirror, and this is where you're gonna begin to make the adjustments.
Oh, we
So
gotta
you,
look at ourselves?
say again?
We have to look at ourselves?
You can. That's ideal, right? You're making a self-portrait, right? So now I'm beginning to get in here and I'm beginning to fill in the gaps where I think I didn't add enough clay. But I also may be using not just additive clay, I may be using subtractive clay. Subtractive clay is just that, going in and removing clay, right? Because I want to make the shape of the breasts and I want to start filling out here where my armpits are going to go. So you're taking away clay and adding clay as you need it, all right? Making sure the proportions look right. Women's shoulders tend to be narrower and we tend to angle down a little bit more. Men, this is, everybody's body is different, but men tend to be a little bit broader in the shoulders. The shoulders tend to be up a little bit higher. It's a different ways that the human body is different, male and female. Obviously it varies by person, but you're looking at all those things and you're stepping back and looking at it, right? You're asking your neighbor, hey, does my head look the right proportion compared to my body? Does my neck look? Does it make sense? You know, help each other. I'll walk around the room, give you guys tips. Notice I'm not worrying about detail. I'm not worrying about getting it perfectly smooth. I'm really focused on proportion. Once you have the proportions the way you want it, and your head is tilted in the direction you want it, because maybe you don't want it facing forward, maybe you want your head tilted to the side or tilted down, then you can begin, especially on the face, smoothing out the head. Don't worry about the body right now. So right now, I am just smoothing out the face, making sure my proportions are right, the angle of my jaw and my chin is correct, and I'm gonna smooth out the face because I want to be able to measure out lines that are gonna help me figure out where to put all my facial details. This is the last thing I'm gonna show you, and then I'm gonna let you guys get to work, and I'll move about the room and give you feedback and help as you need it. All right, so I'm just making sure my neck has the curve that I want, that my head is the angle that I want it, and mostly that the head shape and the proportion of the head compared to the rest of the body is good. You want to make sure you're really curving the clay down here, right? For boys, you're going to have more of a defined Adam's apple, perhaps, depending on where you are in your development. And the girls are going to have less of that. Adam's apple.
It's like your throat.
Yeah. Like you have a very defined Adam's apple, Cole does too, so does Will. That tends to happen as boys mature, right? Whereas women tend to not have
Look
that.
at me, I don't have one.
Like they've had like Adam's apple.
Yeah, no. Men tend to have a more pronounced Adam's apple than women do. Okay, so I'm not worrying so much about the body now. I just want to make sure my face and head are how I want it. All right, so if we go to step 3, right? These pictures, these next subsequent few pictures are only of the face, right? Can you guys see okay? Java, make sure you're paying attention. I only just focusing in on the face so that you can focus in on that area. Obviously the neck and the shoulders are missing in these pictures, all right? It says, after your head, neck, and shoulders are together, begin sculpting basic facial features. I'll demonstrate next class how to do a nose and how to do a mouth. Right now we're focused on this and getting your measured proportions correct. Measure the length of the face from the top of the skull, right? I have rulers over here, from the top of the skull to the point of the chin. Use a ruler to mark a horizontal line across the halfway point. So everybody look, right? You have to figure out where the bottom of your, Angie, turn around please, right? So now the head, I have to take my finger. My head is about 4.5 inches, right? I'm not measuring here. I'm not measuring the top of my forehead. I'm measuring the very top of my skull. So I know that that's 4.5 inches. If I include the top of the skull. And can you, Cole, hand me a pin tool? Helpful to have a pin tool or a knife. You'd be a knife too. Whatever's easier. Yep. So half of 4.5 inches is 2.25. So I just made a mark at 2.25, all right? And now I can make that horizontal line as per the instructions, all right? So this is gonna help me figure out where to put my facial features. Step 4, create a vertical line down the length of the center of the face, right? So that I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to literally eyeball it. So you can see I put my ruler there, right? Whoops. You guys, Javin, make sure you're paying attention, Joel. Okay? Vertical line down the center. So the vertical line, so I know where to put my nose, how to center it, how to center my lips. All right? And then I like to take my ruler, right? I like to take my ruler and actually put it in that horizontal line and push down and up. Move it so the video can see. Down and up. So what I'm essentially creating is that indentation where your eye sockets go. Everybody see that? Okay? Dom, wait to start on the clay until the demo's finished. All right. Now, you have to make a horizontal line where the top of the forehead meets the top of the skull. This is your hairline. So, top of the forehead, right? It's pretty obvious when you look at it, right? It's right where the skull begins to curve back. So that's my hairline line. I'm going to mark that, right? So you're just making all these marks as a guide for yourself, all right? Make a horizontal line just above the eye socket indentation. So this is the eye socket indentation. I'm going to then make a horizontal line right above that. That's where my eyebrows are going to go. So you're creating a visual map for yourself, right? You flip the page, right? It says use a ruler to measure the distance between your hairline and the eyebrow line. Can everybody understand that? The eyebrow line and the hairline? Right, Dom, make sure you're watching. All right? I'm measuring that at 1 inch, okay? Use the same measurement to measure from the eyebrow line down. So, eyebrow line down, 1 inch, right? Now I'm going to mark that line. And I know this seems laborious, like, why am I measuring all these lines? It's really going to help you. Shh. Guys, we're not starting on the clay yet. We're over here watching. All right? So now I've measured from the hairline down to the eyebrow line. The eyebrow line, I made another horizontal line. What is that? That becomes the bottom line for the nose. So now I know, just so you can see, I'm not making a nose right now, but this is essentially the space where my nose is going to go. Right? Angie, we're not on the clay right now. We're over here. All right? All right, step 9, use the same measurement to measure from the bottom of the nose line to the chin. It should be the same distance. So that 1 inch from the hairline to the eyebrow line, from the eyebrow line to the nose line, I'm going to move down a little bit. I know from the nose line to my chin should be the same. What do I do if it's longer? Right? I know right now my chin needs to end here. What can I do to fix that? Just take some clay off, right? So this is helping you with your proportions, right? So I know now that my chin was a little bit too long. Yeah?
Can't you cut into the shape you want it to?
What do you mean?
Like, instead of just pushing the clay down with the chin, you just cut it or sculpt it into the way you want it to.
Yeah, I mean, which is essentially what I did, right? I just kind of like...
obviously push it down, but I'm talking about like cutting pieces.
Yeah, you can cut it off. You can take, that's true, you can take a knife or like a loop tool and carve it off. It's just the clay's so soft that my fingers, right? All right, so now same thing, you're gonna follow the steps in here. It says use the ruler to measure the halfway point between the bottom of the nose line and the bottom of the chin. This becomes where your lips go, and so forth and so on. So you're beginning to map out a chart, right, of where you're going to put your facial features. In next class, I'm going to show you guys how to sculpt nose and lips, right? I will do that on a different demo. When I do the demonstration for the facial features, I will not demo on this. I'm actually going to demo on I'm going to make a giant face. You can see here, years ago, I sculpted Nelson Mandela, right? And that face was probably about this big.
Wow.
Right? But I made it larger so that when you guys watch the demo, you can see clearly the facial features, right? So all you need to do today, we've got about 35 minutes, is get that basic head, neck, and shoulder and begin mapping out the lines you need for your facial feature. Even those of you doing skulls, it's helpful to have things mapped out on the face so you have the skull proportions correct as well. All right, any questions?
No.
Okay, and you're gonna follow the step-by-steps in here, and I'm gonna come around and help you.